Asia Division, Phil. I believe you had a little bit of a drama at your house today. Is that true?
This is a demonstration of flip format.
The building we were in caught fire.
I'm glad you could make it. Anyway.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Jim. First of all, thank you to the ambassador for coming. It's very important to be here. We really appreciate it. I want to thank Rumi and all the people associated with the film. I also want to thank Search and others who were involved in providing the support for the film, because like a film like this
is a demonstration of flip format,
as you pointed out. And Rumi certainly took quite a few risks to do so, and it's come out quite well. Michael was just saying to me, okay, you're batting cleanup, betraying my American roots as a baseball fan. So I'm going to actually have a number of substantive comments, and I hope you'll bear with me. You know, as we're looking at this film,
this is a demonstration of flip format,
who are desperate enough to travel with Rohingya boat people on an incredibly dangerous voyage to try to improve their lives. And unfortunately, we don't get to see the actual voyage. We only hear about it from them. You know, they were not the only ones on this boat. In total, there were 79 persons on the boat that carried these men, and fully 30 of them turned out to be
this is a demonstration of flip format.
Now, 29 of those citizens have gone back to Bangladesh through the support of the embassy and JRS and others who supported their assistance there. And we're glad for that, but we understand that, I understand that one still remains in the IDC. His name is Mohammed Hassan, and actually he needs to be helped to get back home as well. I think that's very important. My understanding was that when the original group put their hands up and said, no, we're not Rohingya, we're Bangladeshi citizens, he didn't put his hand up. So he's been left behind. And there is information about that, and I'll make sure to pass it on to the ambassador. Interestingly, you'll notice when they return to the village, they're surrounded by wailing relatives who obviously they never thought they'd see him again. But the other thing they're returning to, and it's referred to at the end of the film,
this is a demonstration of flip format
that they're paying off bit by bit. You know, you look at the figures, we're talking 70,000 taka to go, plus another 15 or 20,000 taka to get out of the problems on the Thai-Burma border. 90,000 taka for a poor Bangladeshi family is an incredible amount of money, right? And, you know, they're returning, yes. They're alive, yes, and that should be celebrated. But it's also a story about
this is a demonstration of flip format,
and failed migration that leaves the family worse off. I mean, I think that it's interesting that the wife of one of the men said, I was against him going overseas at the first place, because she understood the risks. I mean, obviously he felt that he was going to be able to make it. He felt that he was going to be able to send money back. But increasingly you see that there is a lot of failed migration that devastates not only the families but also the communities.
This is a demonstration of flip format.
It was interesting to see that they're back now after they get back. You know, you have them after 2 years, and they're working, but you know they're basically worse off than they were before they went. So just as, you know, successful migration has benefits, and this is talked about, there's a number of the Bangladesh NGOs that speak very clearly to this, that said, you know, there's a strong inclination of the Bangladesh government to try to push very hard for people to send back remittances. This is a big part of the economy, just like in the Philippines or other countries which are major labor-sending countries. So failed migration devastates families and communities, and no one talks about that. No one talks about what it means. I was at a seminar last year in Vietnam where there was an academic report. They had interviewed 1,200 returning migrants coming back to Vietnam. They found that fully 30% of those who had gone overseas had come back worse off than when they left. And the reason why you have these horror stories of failed migration is the incredible amount of money and corruption and influence that is used in the recruitment processes. which doesn't get cleaned up. You see it here in Bangladesh in this story, but I could tell you similar stories from Cambodia, from Thailand.
This is a demonstration
Vietnam,
of flip format.
You know, from Indonesia, from India, from Pakistan. I mean, what we're talking about is an increasingly a global racket, just with national characteristics, talking about how to cheat the migrant who's trying to move. You know, these people were coming, you know, to the promised land that they imagined in Malaysia. They were just coming through Thailand on the way and got hung up.
This is a demonstration of flip
They
format.
entrusted their lives to these boatmen and brokers. But I would tell you that those who go through the legal manpower agencies from Bangladesh, in many cases, don't end up much better. They may actually get to Malaysia. But if you talk to organizations that work with migrants in Malaysia, it's serious exploitation. It's similarly bad. Often, they'll face very high recruitment fees that you heard about in Bangladesh, going overseas.
This is a demonstration
They get
of flip format.
promised a job by this manpower agency. You'll be earning this amount of money. You'll be in this sort of job. You know, there's contract substitution when they arrive in Malaysia. There's none of that. It's completely different. Oftentimes in Malaysia, they are, in fact, charged money by a labor placement company. So there's a broker or a middleman in Malaysia that's also taking a bite out of them. And often there's not enough work
This
for
is
them
a
to do.
demonstration
So they
of
borrow
flip
money, they
format.
mortgage houses, they mortgage property, and they borrow money from these loan sharks at high levels of interest. And it's a race against time. They get to Malaysia, they can't earn enough money. And they know that they're failing. So it's interesting when they went back, and these people are crying and wailing and so happy to see them. Do you see how sheepish they were, sort of looking there? Because they realize they've just walked back into a situation where they've got 90,000 taka.
This is a
wrapped around the necks of their
demonstration
families.
of flip format.
So the desperation to move, I would say, you know, says something profoundly chilling about the state of economic development in Bangladesh. I mean, I hope that the garment industry can pick it up. Probably have to improve labor conditions a bit, however. And the big issue, of course, is skilled labor. But as a friend of mine from the American Union, the United Farm Workers, said,
This is a
people shouldn't have to
demonstration
pay to
of
work.
flip format.
But for migrants, they pay to work all the time. But the story, I would say, is not quite complete if we just talk about the Bangladeshi citizens who traveled on that boat here to Thailand. Because there were 49 other men on the boat who were Rohingya. To date, 3 of them have died. They've been held in immigration custody long enough that 3 died. There's another, the 46 remaining are
This is a
still waiting,
demonstration
still stuck
of
in
flip
IDC.
format.
They're forlorn, they're forgotten. There's no real clear way out for them at this point. And to that number, there's been another 7 Rohingya that have been arrested since then. So we're talking about 53 Rohingya in the IDC lockup biding time. And they faced the curse that these 2 men didn't, which they faced the curse of being stateless. They're unacknowledged by the military government of Burma.
This is a demonstration of
claims
flip
that they're not
format.
citizens, and unfortunately they're refused and increasingly abused by Bangladesh, which just wants them to leave. Now, 2 years ago, and you saw it mentioned in the film, the world sat shocked, you know, as the news came out that the Thai Navy had dragged boatloads of emaciated Rohingya on their decrepit boats out to sea and let them loose without enough food and water and without a functioning engine on the boat.
This
For at
is a
least one of those
demonstration
boatloads
of
which
flip format.
disappeared, that was like a death sentence. And there were probably some Bangladeshis on that as well. Bangladeshi citizens were on that boat as well, I'm sure. Now, are we going to see that again this year? This is what I was talking about in my comments in the film. Because we're right at the cusp of the sailing season. This is the period of time when the storms abate on the Andaman Sea, the currents start moving the right way. You know, are we going to see more desperate boatloads of men, Rohingya, and perhaps Bangladeshi
This is a
citizens
demonstration
too, who have been
of flip
deceived
format.
or have been told that they, you know, are going to be able to get a certain great package when they arrive in Malaysia? Are they going to try to make it somewhere? Are they going to try to make a move to go overseas? It's a clear question, but it's something that the international community has not come up with an adequate answer to. Who are these Rohingya? A lot of people, I think, probably saw
this
that
is a
in
demonstration
the FCCT
of flip
bulletin
format.
talking about the Rohingya. The film doesn't say. And I would add that perhaps the fact that the Rohingya are left in the background, largely unexplained by this film, in such a tragic, tragic story of these two men, you know, who are going to rue this experience for the rest of their lives. I think that says something actually very profound about the Rohingya. They're Muslim. They're speaking a dialect that is neither
this
fully
is a
Bengali or
demonstration
Burmese.
of flip format.
They've resided for over 300 years in northern Arakan state in Burma. And the military government, and let's make no mistake, this so-called election that just happened over the weekend didn't change anything. It's still a military government. They've just changed uniforms. You know, has abused them perhaps more than any other ethnic group in Burma. And that's saying a lot. Forced labor, restrictions on movement, forcing them to remain in the village, restrictions on the right to marry.
This is a demonstration of flip format.
Deprivation of food, education, health. It is hard, I would argue, to find anywhere worse in Asia than the human rights that you find in northern Arakan state being inflicted on the Rohingya. So not surprisingly, they flee. They flee military abuse and violence. And they cross to Bangladesh, where there are no more than probably about 200,000 of them. Bangladesh
this is
has,
a demonstration
in our view, an
of
obligation
flip
to
format.
receive them and to screen them in a fair procedure in cooperation with UNHCR to assess whether they are refugees. This, however, is not happening. And I think that's a very big problem. Yeah, this has to be dealt with. There are 28,000 Rohingya who are registered refugees. This is actually a remnant of a previous group of Rohingya that
this is a demonstration
came from the
of flip format.
1990s who had fled into Bangladesh. And they're the only ones who are considered registered refugees. Ideally, we're hoping that they would be able to resettle overseas, internationally. However, there's been some problems with that recently.